Welcome in to the Mile High Hoops podcast. It's me, Jake Shapiro, rocking my Paris Olympics shirt right now with my absolute boy, Aniello Piro, one of our new staff members here at Denver Sports. AP, I know Nuggets Nation knows you well, so there's no need for an introduction, and we can get right into it, talking Nugs. You see the title if you clicked on it. Are the Nuggets doomed? We've talked a lot about it a lot here on this podcast, but the last week kind of feels like a death march towards inevitability at this point.
Yeah, no Jokic. I do not want to go back to life without Nikola Jokic or before Nikola Jokic because you're kind of getting this sample size here right now. I mean, we'll talk about the Bulls match, obviously, losing 129 to 119 on Monday night. Weird win against the Rockets. You know, they figured out a way to beat the Warriors not so long ago with no Jokic, no Murray. I mean, this team just makes no sense. But I don't know if doomed is the right word. Like they're still going to be competitive, right? I mean, they're the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, right? We'll see where they end up. I think it'll kind of come down to matchups for this Denver Nuggets team. But the reality of the situation is, Shap, they are a far cry from the team they were 2 seasons ago that won the chip.
Yeah, they don't have the margin for error. That's like the most obvious way to put it. They need a lot of things to go right. I think matchup wise in the West is the big thing. Like if they run into Golden State in the first round and then they play Houston in the second round, they're going to the Western Conference Finals. At the exact same time, if they run into Minnesota in the first round, they might be done in 5. Yeah. So I don't know, but like you look at the last week, and the thing that I've really loved about Nuggets basketball the last 5-7 years is the style of play they do is just so fun. It's so entertaining. It's team dependent. It's a lot of passing. It's contradictory to almost every other team in the NBA, and it's all led by Nikola Jokic. And on top of that, Michael Malone has really instilled this grit and toughness within this team that they're always in games, they never give up, and they're rugged. They've got an edge to them, as proved by their best player shoving Marcus Morris in the back, right? Like they are rough. That team and that identity, I don't think has been apparent at all this season. And it's even more glaring when Jokic is off the floor because you think you could revert to some of those principles when Jokic is not here. Okay, maybe we're going to play a little bit stronger defensively because we can do those types of things without Jokic at the rim. Maybe we'll be a little bit tougher. Maybe we'll bring a little more grit without Jokic. We'll make the game a little more clogged up. None of those things are apparent.
Yeah, and I forget the exact terminology that they used on the drive last night. I was listening to Zach and Phil on my way home, but they look like a team that's never really discovered their identity this year. Like sometimes it feels like they're just kind of flying by the skin of their teeth, right? You've got the best player in the world. Jamal Murray's been pretty good since the tail end of 2024 and obviously a majority of 2025. And it just feels like they're banking on flipping that switch. And I go back to that quote from Jokic, I believe it was after the Washington loss couple of weeks ago, talking about how he doesn't believe that they can flip a switch, that you kind of are what your record says you are. And they haven't settled into a groove. I guess the one groove that you've seen them in this year, what was it, an 8 or 9 game win streak there in the middle of February, but against not so good teams, subpar opponents, teams that you expect this Denver Nuggets team to take care of business against. And I know that it's been kind of murderer's row here with their schedule down the stretch, but the interesting part, you know, you think about the Lakers game, the Thunder, the Celtics, you know, all these big games, Golden State, Milwaukee coming up later this week as well. The interesting dynamic here is the games that Denver has had the most trouble with are against the teams that they should beat. And I understand that Chicago's playing good basketball right now, had won 7 of their last 10 entering into last night's matchup. But you see them lose to Washington. Portland's been a thorn in their side this year. And there's just something missing. You've got championship DNA, but for whatever reason, they're unable to string it together for 48 minutes. You get a good quarter here, a good quarter there, but the body of work speaks for itself.
Okay, what do Washington, Portland, and Chicago have in common, Aniello?
They got some good shooters. They got some good guard play.
Good guard play. Guards that specifically are under 6'3", 6'5", really shifty guys. So I just pulled this up. The most points scored against the Nuggets this season by opposing players. Kyrie Irving, 43 points in Dallas, or in Denver for Dallas. That was the number 1. Okay. So Kyrie, Tyrese Maxey, Trey Murphy, another smaller player, guard. OG Anunoby doesn't count on this list. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, guard, but, you know, a little bit bigger. James Harden, guard. Jordan Poole, guard. Norman Powell, guard. Austin Reeves, guard. Colby White, guard. Denny Avia, forward. Miles Bridges, forward. So of the top 10 on this list, before you start getting to, Miles Bridges, Denny Avia, Victor Wembanyama, of the top 10 on this list, all 10 are guards. One is a bigger guard because it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who maybe you'd want to guard with a guy like Aaron Gordon. But all of these other players, all 9 of them, are guys Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would have been guarding for sure last year. And, I think it's harder to judge the Nuggets defense this year than people are making it out to be because of the differences in team construction they've had throughout the course of the year. Specifically, their best defender is Aaron Gordon, who's just not been a factor for most of this season because of the injuries he's had. And it makes sense why they are literally one of the worst 5 teams in defense in the NBA. But a lot of that is also because of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope not being here. And the big thought was that Christian Braun would come in here and be a like-for-like swap of KCP defensively, and the offense would be the thing that struggles. Well, Christian has been awesome on offense, been far better than my wildest expectations on offense. And I know the shooting goes and comes and whatever. I don't really care. That's not the thing that Christian Braun is meant to do. But the thing that Christian Braun is meant to do that has not been there at all has been play strong, rough, and tough defense. And last night against Colby White, he's going over every single screen when he's guarding Josh Giddey. Like, the principles of what he is doing is wrong. Mind you, he is more focused on offense last night because, Jokic isn't there. But just everything about Christian's game on the defensive end is bothering me at this point in the season.
It's been a weird year for CB because I feel like the initial first handful of games for the season, he looked nice, then kind of went through a downward spell there in December, the shooting department, the defense, right? Picked it back up, I felt like, to start 2025. But to your point, it's been abysmal. It's been a tough watch out there. And, he was able to play, kind of be that spark plug along with Bruce Brown 2 seasons ago, coming off the bench, playing good defense, driving to the basket, right? And what's the old saying that, offense is skill-based, defense is effort-based. That's a term, kind of a thing that you hear thrown around the league when in conversation and whatnot. And I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, because you even saw on the offensive end of the floor last night against Chicago how his poor defense affected his offense. Late in the fourth quarter, Denver couldn't buy a bucket, and I need to delete my brain from that game with that Christian Braun Euro step. I saw him try to do it 2 or 3 times, and I'm sitting there what's going on? And look, Denver, whether it's a first round exit, a second round exit, an NBA Finals appearance, whatever it might be, the only way that Denver's going to get that far in the NBA playoffs is a couple of things. Most importantly, Christian Braun, MPJ, who I know we'll talk about as well, but he needs to be better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And real quick, I know there's a lot of Nuggets fans that were talking about, KCP's not playing well in Orlando right now. Look at his shooting percentage. Look at this. Look at that. If you don't think that KCP would be better with Nikola Jokic, with this team, than he is in Orlando, I don't know what to tell you. I understand why Denver didn't want to go to the price range that he ended up getting from Orlando, but you could use that veteran type of guy, which Christian Braun is just not at this point.
And on top of that, it wasn't an either-or decision. You could have had both guys at the same time.
It's a good point.
I come back to with KCP, and they need salary to match in trades, which they could have done this offseason with KCP if they only wanted him for 1 more year and they signed him to a 2-year deal. So Christian, what I will say about him as a positive thing is when he really honed in on defense recently, which was that Oklahoma City stretch, back-to-back nights against Oklahoma City, he looked really, really good defensively in those games. So my hope is that he is just more focused on offense right now and has been this season. And when it gets to the playoffs, he'll be more focused on defense. Because if you'll remember, Aniello, last year, he was focused a lot early on in the season in playmaking and trying to be kind of like a backup point guard. That didn't work. But over time, he was able to kind of flip the switch back to being that defender guy that we saw. It just didn't work out in the playoffs last year for a myriad of reasons. I don't think it was Christian Braun's fault, but one of the people that did take the blame, I personally didn't blame him, but he himself said he was the reason the Nuggets lost last year, was Michael Porter Jr. And after maybe the best stretch of 10 games in MPJ's career right before the All-Star break, before his injury, MPJ, since the All-Star break, he's played in 18 games. He's shooting 30% from 3. He's a minus in 10 of his 18 games in that stretch. Yeah, Jokic isn't playing, and I think Michael Porter Jr., there's some statistics that show Michael Porter Jr. is the least reliant player on Jokic in the Nuggets lineup, I would argue that despite those statistics, Michael Porter Jr. might be the most reliant on Nikola Jokic. So I think it's been a tough spot for Michael Porter Jr., but I'm a little concerned that maybe that injury was a little bit worse than we thought, because he has not looked the same player since the All-Star break. And on top of that, the shooting numbers have just dissipated, and you can see him losing confidence in that shot. And it's funny to say that about a guy who shot 10 shots last night from three, but there have been a couple times over the last couple games where he has definitely been run off the line.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, if you just look at his numbers for the year, I believe he's, let's see, just a shade below 40% from three. And so, he's been having from putting up the numbers that you kind of expect from a guy like Michael Porter Jr. But I go back to your point about when he was lighting the world on fire ahead of the All-Star break. I mean, who did he do that against? Charlotte twice, Orlando, New Orleans twice, right? And then I look at this recent stretch of games. It's like you get one good game for every three rough games for Michael Porter Jr. scoring wise. The one department where Michael Porter Jr. has been excellent this year is cleaning the glass. I mean, he has been grabbing rebound after rebound after rebound, finishing with double doubles. But you need Michael Porter Jr. to be that third scoring option. And I know that Aaron Gordon's been, when he's out there healthy, has been effective from beyond the arc as well. But you know as well as I do, Shap, when Michael Porter Jr. is dialed in from three-point land, it changes the entire dynamic of this team. It takes pressure off Jokic. It takes pressure off Murray. It allows Aaron Gordon to do some different things, takes pressure off CB. And I mentioned how if Denver wants to contend for a championship, Christian Brown's, very important to that. I think the single most important thing outside of Nikola Jokic's health is getting Michael Porter Jr. locked in mentally, because you cannot compete, whether it's Oklahoma City, insert Western Conference team here, if Michael Porter Jr. is not hitting his shots.
Yeah, to me, that those things are a little bit further down the list behind Jamal Murray being awesome, which we'll get to in a second. Right. I think that's the number two besides just Jokic being Jokic. But, looking at Porter specifically, and one of the things that really bugged me last night is him not closing. And I understand he was a minus 22 and was 1 for 10 in the game. But you have Russell Westbrook with the ball down 6, wide open 3, and he looks off of it and then just dribbles into a worse pull-up jump shot. And this is something Russ continuously does, and he makes some of the worst decisions I've ever seen on a basketball court, which is crazy because very few people play as much basketball as Russell Westbrook has. So it's like some of that veteran experience should go to your brain, because like there was a stretch last night where he had like 2 straight turnovers, just jumping in the air and throwing the ball away. He does this almost every single night. I don't get it. I'm not doing the Westbrook show right now because that's another time, and I need to do some prep for that because it is wild. But I do not understand under any circumstances closing with Westbrook over Michael Porter Jr. I know what the Nuggets were going for because they wanted to stop Colby White, but the roster construction of this team says a lot of how poor it is when Russell Westbrook is your option to be a perimeter defender. And I think it really says a lot about how flawed this team is when they need the rebounding. Like, they are the 19th best team in the league in defensive rebound percentage. They need Porter's glass cleaning ability, and they need his size, particularly when Jokic isn't out there. And he's a pretty good rim protector, is the thing people don't talk about with Michael Porter Jr. And they need him roaming that back line when there is no Aaron Gordon and DJ is gassed. They need Porter out there. And instead it's Westbrook out there, and he is not additive in any single way down the stretch of games. There has not been a time recently within the last 10 games, besides that one steal he had against the Lakers, which the Nuggets shouldn't even been in that situation, where he's been additive in the closing stretch. So I was really ticked off by that, Aniello. And I don't know that the Nuggets win the game last night if Porter's closing instead of Westbrook. But the point of that, couple that whole discussion of the Nuggets closing lineup with or without Jokic, with the fact that DeAndre Jordan has to play 30 minutes on both sides of a back-to-back for the first time since 2021. And I think it just speaks to how poorly this roster was constructed.
You're going right where I was going to, and the roster's flawed, and that's the thing is, and I put it out on Twitter last night, or X, whatever you want to call it, at Media by AP. If this last week or so of games do not show you just how truly valuable Nikola Jokic is to this team, wake up, because this team is a fringe playoff team, maybe even a play-in team without this guy. And I agree with you about Russ. And I think, due to some injuries to Jamal early in the year, we know Michael Malone loves his vets. And I think to your point on Michael Porter Jr. as well, this is not new. Like we've seen Malone withhold Michael Porter Jr. from clutch moments at the end of games. And I know that was a major talking point among some media members and fans alike in regard to should they or should they not try to trade MPJ.
Well, and Aniello, it was one thing in 2023 when your option was Bruce Brown.
Correct.
Like it's a different style of player. Like I understand Bruce Brown is a better defender than Michael Porter Jr. for the specific task of guarding on the perimeter. Russell Westbrook has never been a defender.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the interesting with Russ, too, is he's probably playing the best basketball that he has in the last 4 or 5 years. Like, better than he was with the Lakers, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Wizards. I don't count because they were just awful and in oblivion. But, like, it feels like you've kind of reached your saturation point with Russ, where you kind of just know what he is, right? Like, he's been good in spurts, he's been bad in spurts, but that's kind of what you expected. And, you know, Malone just has this unwavering belief and commitment to his veteran players. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And I think if we're just reading between the lines with how Michael Porter Jr. has been handled in years past compared to kind of where we're at now, Malone will probably try to close with Russell Westbrook in favor of Michael Porter Jr. as long as the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. And I think that for me, one of the things I would do if I were the head coach of the Nuggets is I would be more keen to close with Peyton Watson instead of Russell Westbrook. If I was in the situation of needing another defender on the floor. Personally, I don't understand why the Nuggets have not gone to this lineup more, which their core 4 guys with Peyton Watson at the 2, and just try to replicate some of the things that made them great in 2023, which is just size and athleticism and shooting ability. And I think Peyton's a little bit more confident in his stroke than Christian Braun, and certainly more so than Russell Westbrook. And, you know, I think Peyton plays really well off Nikola Jokic. And yeah, he can make some dumb fouls at times, but the Nuggets have survived that with other players in the past. So, you know, one of the other things that hasn't been discussed a lot during this stretch of Miss Julian Strother's bench scoring, his ability to space the floor. I think kind of a bunch of things have kind of hit the Nuggets at once here over the last stretch. And personally, I'm not panicking per se, because I think this team is exactly who I thought they were before this stretch. But at the same time, everything has been confirmed and they have not moved any ground or moved me towards thinking they're closer to the top 3 teams in the NBA. Instead, obviously, the Nuggets are the 4th best team in the NBA. And to me, they might be closer to 5 and 6 than I had, you know, before this stretch.
Yeah, I have no idea what they are. Because, like, I look back to that game against Oklahoma City, and I'm like, all right, like, they're going toe-to-toe, Jokic doing his thing, Jamal three-point land, boom, boom, boom. And then I think about the Wizards, I think about the Celtics, I think about the Knicks. You beat Golden State with no Murray or Jokic. They're just such a confusing team that at the end of the day, the one thing that I can rest my head on at night in regards to can this team contend for a championship, when you have the best player in the world by far, no disrespect to SGA, you're always going to have a chance. You're always going to have a chance, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But at the end of the day, one man cannot lift this team to a championship, in my opinion. You brought up Jamal Murray. I agree with you on that front. I think Michael Porter Jr. is key. Russ not making dumb turnovers. Christian Braun stepping it up on the 3-and-D, right? And you bring up Peyton Watson a couple minutes ago. He had himself a game last night. I believe a career-high 24 points for P. Watt. He has been butter from the corner 3 as of late. And the other thing in defense of Peyton Watson, this is a guy that only played in garbage time in his rookie year, barely played in college at UCLA, and was drafted, you know, basically off of his intangibles, his skill set, his size, his athleticism. He's a guy that needs reps and needs maturation. I think Peyton Watson can be a key component to this team moving forward, but I think it's also putting a lot of the weight on his shoulders to try to expect him to be quote unquote perfect or close to it for a team that's supposed to contend for a championship.
Yeah, literally the most points Peyton Watson scored in a basketball game since high school was the last night.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, you know, and again, that's putting a lot. And it's not that many. It wasn't like he scored 40, right? You know, so, you know, it's putting a lot on P. Watt. I think that with P. Watt, you know, I still don't know that Malone's going to actually trust him and play him in the playoffs. I could see a situation where we get to where Malone's just plays him for 4 minutes in the first half and says, I'm not playing this dude, which I think would be a mistake. And I think that's one of the reasons why they lost to the Wolves last year is Peyton was really good for that matchup and they just didn't play Peyton. So that's one thing to look out for. You know, this is not the time to make this show, but, you know, a show that I think we should do here is just how wrong everyone was about Jamal Murray early on in the season. I personally am not in that everyone. I was on Jamal's positive pro side the entire time. I've been the biggest Jamal Murray stan. And this is the Jamal Murray that the people that hate Jamal wanted to see. I think that this has been another level of Jamal Murray. I think the Jamal Murray we were getting in, you know, November, December, that wasn't the one we were getting in October, but the one we were getting towards, you know, Christmas time was a max level player. That was still a really good player, a guy who's 19-6 and, shooting pretty well and, providing sparks for the Nuggets. This level of Jamal Murray is a level we have never seen from him. And this is the type of player that makes all-star games.
Yeah, 100%. And I wouldn't say that I was on the other side of you with that. I was just frustrated. I was like, what is going on? And the one thing that I've learned from covering the NBA for, almost a decade now, it's hard to believe that's the case, is unlike, I don't want to say unlike, but like the NHL I've been around, MLB I've been around, NFL, college football, like sometimes NBA players are just a little moody, right? And it's just like, do they show up? Do they not show up? Like you can't really base some sample sizes off of them, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. Like the NBA is the one sport where like, if the guy is dialed in and locked in, he's going to perform. And sometimes it's an emotional thing. And I think Jamal, to your point, has been sensational all of 2025, tail end of 2024. Last night against the Bulls, put the team on his back, essentially 28 points, 4 of 9 from 3, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, a complete game from Jamal Murray. And the contract is the contract. Obviously, they want a championship with him. Jokic loves him. It's peanut butter and jelly at the end of the day. And if Jamal is playing like this, you get Jokic healthy, you got Gordon going healthy as well. MPJ hopefully knocking down some 3-point shots, please. They might have a chance. But to your point, I do think this is some of the best basketball Jamal's been playing.
He's right off his career percentage from the field. He's shooting 40% from 3. He's scoring a career high 21.7. He's just off his career marks in assists and rebounds. And again, this is counting his rough start to the season, which we all know was rough. I'm not gonna mince my words about that one. Tough. Yeah, but since he's been fantastic, and that's the one thing I come back to in answering the question: are the Nuggets doomed? If they're getting this Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic is the guy we've seen throughout the course of the season, which is literally the best offensive player in the history of basketball, the Nuggets still have the 2 best players in the NBA. They still have the best duo. And I know how flawed the roster is, particularly when it comes to perimeter defense. I don't know that the Nuggets are going to be able to overcome that perimeter defense, but I'm also not going to call them doomed, because a lot of times in the NBA, when you have a duo as good as Jamal and Nikola can be, and they have not even shown the fullest extent of their chemistry this year. I think things have been off at times between those two. So if they can get together, and this is the level Jamal Murray's at, and that's the level Nikola Jokic is at, I still have a hard time finding a team that's definitely for sure going to beat the Nuggets, because they can go ahead and beat the Thunder with that style of play. And it's crazy to say, because the Thunder have been so much better than the Nuggets this year.
Yeah, and you saw it, and it was funny, right? I tweeted it out as well. Like, that's so Nuggets to lose on national TV to the Thunder, Perkins, Stephen A. watching, and then bounce back late at night on Monday and run them off the floor. And so Minnesota's the one team, and we'll get into some playoff preview stuff with the regular season beginning to wind down. They still got a matchup against Minnesota, I believe, April 1st. So next week is when that matchup is between Denver and Minnesota. They've got to get They got to get the ghost out of the closet with that one. You've got to try to beat them at home, give yourself some momentum, some belief, because they do scare me, Anthony Edwards and company. And I think at the end of the day, that's why I just don't know. Like, I know that's not great conversation, but like in moments they look like a championship caliber team. In other moments, they look like a bottom feeder. So, like, what is it going to be? Are they going to rely on trying to flip that switch? But to your point, when you've got Jamal cooking, you've got Jokic cooking, if they can clamp down on defense, because why did Denver end up getting bounced last year in the second round of Minnesota? A lot of it was because they were gassed, making up for lost time with defense. If they can just play fundamentally sound basketball, to your point, along with the 2 best players, the best duo in the playoffs, absolutely they have a chance. But the record tells me that they're not going to do that. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, the Nuggets look gassed right now, which is a concern. And, you know, they've got a stretch of a bunch of games here at home. They've got 4 more games on this home trip, or this homestand. They've got 9 games left in the season. They've got Milwaukee, Utah, Minnesota. The thing to note is between Utah and Minnesota, they've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, which is pretty huge. Then they've got, because the NBA is very annoying, a back-to-back after having 3 days off. And then they're in Golden State for 3 games and 4 nights. They're back home against Indiana. They're in Sacramento. And then they're at home against Memphis and at Houston to end the season.
Not easy.
I think right now, if you looked at it, and the Nuggets are a game and a half back of Houston, who plays tonight. They're a game above LA for the 4 spot, who played and lost last night. I think the Nuggets are kind of inching towards the 3. They still got a chance at the 2, but given what their lessons were from last year, and not chasing seeding and instead going for rest, which they've already been doing with being cautious about Jokic and Gordon, it would make some sense to shut some other guys down, which means they would be more likely to end with the 3 spot. The other thing to look out for, which is something Michael Malone mentioned to me 2 years ago, and I've kept in the back of my head, is he doesn't like being the 1 or the 2 for the specific reason of it's harder to scout because you don't know who you're going to play until later in that week. So if you get the 3 seed, you know right away who the 6 is and who you're playing, and you've got a week to prepare. Now, I think in a perfect world, Malone obviously would want the 1 or 2, and I don't think this is a tiebreaker thing. But my point in saying that is Malone believes there are some upsides to being the 3. And if the 3 was today, the Nuggets would play the Warriors, who I like a lot in that matchup. And in the second round, it's the winner of Houston versus the winner of the play-in game between Minnesota and LA. So there's a very good chance that the Nuggets can play Golden State in the first round with a home court advantage and then take on a very young Houston Rockets team with them having home court advantage. So whatever. Nuggets have proved they don't need home court advantage. They've had some of the best road victories in the history of the playoffs over the last couple of years in franchise history. Or you're maybe playing the Clippers, which have looked a lot better lately, but I still am not trusting Kawhi Leonard, who has played 2 playoff games since 2021 to be in a playoff series. So there's a scenario here that's the most likely scenario still on the table for the Nuggets, where they kind of just find a way into the Western Conference Finals. And I think that it's still prudent for the Nuggets to rest their players. And as much as I want to see the 5 of the last 6 MVPs on the floor tomorrow night with Giannis and Jokic, I think there's a case to be made for the Nuggets that can just continue to rest these guys.
I would agree with you. And obviously, no Jokic has been a brutal watch. Jamal missed some time earlier in the year, so and he's been on the injury report here as of late. Aaron Gordon obviously not playing last night against Chicago. Aaron Gordon is key to get healthy as well. I mean, when you talk about defense and the ability to shoot the 3-point shot as he has this year, I mean, you need Aaron Gordon. And so that's why, in the short term, in the immediate sense, I agree with you. Who doesn't want to see Jokic and Giannis, right? But if resting Jokic with 9 games left, rested on maybe half of these games or so, or whatever it might be, even if it's being over precautious, it's a win because you need this guy locked in and ready to go come playoff time if you want to have a chance. We'll see what happens with Jamal and company, but I agree. Hopefully the Nuggets have learned their lesson from last year about going all out, all gas, no breaks to try to get a top seed and try to work a little bit smarter instead of harder and try to prioritize some matchups and prioritize health to try to have some longevity here in the NBA playoffs.
He's Aniello Pero. I am Jake Shapiro. This is the Mile High Hoops podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to all of our content on Denver Sports on YouTube. We've got so much good stuff on the Broncos as the draft nears. Hockey's really heating up. If you haven't been paying attention to the Avs, they look like they might win the Cup this year. So make sure you check out Will Peterson's podcast. We will be back on Thursday. We'll talk about that Bucks game. We'll get you ready for the weekend as well. Might do some more college basketball stuff as well, as I've talk to some people about who the Nuggets might be interested in as an undrafted free agent, or if they're able to trade back into the second round, who they might be interested into. So I'll have that information for you on Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you then.